On the art of inspired teaching. The Transformers meets Professor Reuven Feuerstein, a man of vision who devised a system of education for children of all abilities and aptitudes.
He's a man who seems to have stepped out of the pages of the Old Testament. His name is Reuven Feuerstein, and he believes that all children are capable of learning, whatever their culture, whatever their genes. This is the story of an idea born in Jerusalem that offers hope to every child who ever had to struggle to learn.
Good. Good. Bravo. Bravo! No problem.
In the hills above Jerusalem, at a place called Shoresh, senior educators from 28 different countries have come to listen to a great teacher and to watch him at work.
Now he is organized adequately. Then you can see how the organizational improvement has affected also some other functions. Now I'm going to the second phase of this test.
Reuven Feuerstein is assessing a boy who's been described as unteachable.
Good. And the second one. Now.
Dragan, a young Yugoslav, has severe behavior problems. He's been rejected by every school he's attended in his own country.
Where is the third? Ah, that's it.
I can't remember.
You will remember.
That I can remember.
You see, this is something you have to learn. You can't remember immediately from the first time. You see, here you have a problem of up and down.
Oh, yes.
And the fourth one? Bravo.
Dragan's been brought to Jerusalem because Professor Feuerstein is his last...
Now it's four.
Now you made it four, eh? You didn't believe that you will make it, huh? Okay. Take your hand now. With this end, start to try to find.
He's not being given an intelligence test. It's one designed to discover how he thinks and where the flaw in his learning process is.
Try to find it.
Carefully steered by the professor, Dragan has solved a series of difficult abstract problems, and his attention hasn't wavered in 2 hours.
Very good. Up.
Ah, my God.
Dragan.
I cannot.
You're such a schlumper. This individual is a real intelligent and rapid learner. The question is what he learns. This is a guy you don't have to dig very deep in order to find a strata of diamonds, of capacities, of potential. All you have to do is a little bit wipe away the sand, and there it is. And you have seen it happening in front of you. The question is, why doesn't he use these beautiful capacities he has? Number one. Okay, let me write it down.
At 16, and with an organic disorder, Dragan would be defined by most experts as beyond educational rescue. But this test has proved he can learn, and learn intelligently.
Remember, it was here, and I turned it away.
The Learning Potential Assessment device, the LPAD as it's called, doesn't measure what a child knows, but what he might be capable of learning. And it's just one of many educational tools that Feuerstein and his followers use.
Remember where it was and remember where it went.
Today, Feuerstein's methods are being practiced by more than 25,000 teachers in 30 countries.
Non, mais là, moi, je trouve qu'on commence à trouver ce que l'on veut.
Here at Shoresh, the wide cultural mix of the delegates and the intellectual excitement generated by the debates suggest the presence of an idea whose time has come.
The people who benefit most are the weaker ones.
Yes.
And the instrumental enrichment is the first time that they are really experiencing success.
After 40 years in the wilderness, the prophet from Jerusalem is at last being heard.
Il y a deux modalités. L'une est qu'ils arriveront ici.
Reuven Feuerstein found a perfect arena for his ideas in Youth Aliyah, the organization that brings young immigrants to Israel. Kiryat Ye'arim, near Jerusalem, is one of their residential children's villages. This is where adolescents from broken homes are introduced to a special kind of teaching that changes the way they think. Since 1958, thousands of children have been rescued from approved schools, from street gangs, from illiteracy and prostitution.
To decide.
What Feuerstein and his followers have built is a kind of intensive care unit for deprived children. After 2 years here, 80% of these children will enter ordinary school.
עכשיו, מה שנדרש מכם זה לחפש פה על הלוח הזה את אותם המרכיבים, אותם החלקים שצריך לקחת כדי לבנות את הצורה הזאת.
It was in classes like this that Professor Feuerstein developed and refined a system he calls mediated learning experience, a method in which the teacher's positive intervention at exactly the right moment is vital.
תסתכלו בבקשה, זה קשה, אבל אני רוצה ללמד אתכם איך לעשות את זאת. תסתכלו כאן. כולכם, תסתכלו אליי. כמה צורות אתם רואים כאן? כמה צבעים אתם רואים כאן? לבן, אדום. שישה צבעים. עכשיו יש הבדל בין...
The stencil test he's giving the children is actually very difficult. They have to match colors with shapes to make up a complicated design. The professor will encourage and push the children until they make their own leaps of discovery.
או האם מדובר כאן באיזושהי צורה אחרת? כן? יפה מאוד. גזרו החוצה. החור הזה נותן צורה. עכשיו תקשיבו טוב, זה, שוב פעם, חור. איזה צורה יש לחור הזה? עיגול. תראו, אם אתם מסתכלים בזה...
It's not what they're learning that's different, it's the way they're being taught. He's not making them absorb facts, he's teaching them how to think.
Basically, mediated learning experience is when I interpose myself between the learner, the child, and the whole world. And I make the world accessible to the child. I interpret it. I change the things which the child has to see so that they will be appealing, or that they will go through the system, especially when he has some barriers. עכשיו, מה יקרה אם אני אקח את 7, את 15, לשים אותו על 7? מה יקרה? מה נראה? יופי, מצוין. עוד פעם אחת, אבל אני רוצה עכשיו לתת דבר הזה. תתחילו מלמטה. יש לא צריכים על זה. אז מלמטה. מהו הדבר מלמטה? 11. מצוין. אני רוצה שניקח את השני. מה צריך לבחור כדי לעשות את מספר 2? אני רוצה. בבקשה. כן. There's no way to be human without mediated learning experience. The real mediator is the parent. And today, more than ever, for a variety of historical, economical reasons, this modality of interaction between parents and children is becoming less and less frequent, less and less intensive. Parents just delegate others to do it for them. Delegated caregiver, the delegated nursery school, the delegated teacher, the delegate society. They don't feel even that they are not qualified educators, that they have to, and some of them even think that they do not have the right to impose their past on the children and guide by this past their future. And this creates conditions of cultural deprivation. Children who do not have the past which the parents transmit to them live in a totally flat, horizontal world. So today, more than ever, people have to be taught the issue of mediated learning experience and its importance in the making of man.
Reuven Feuerstein is a Romanian Jew with a vocation to teach. He came to the Holy Land when World War II was over and was seized by a vision. He saw a host of children flooding out of the refugee camps of Europe, and all they had in common was loss. Loss of culture, loss of family, loss of language.
He couldn't give up on any one of them. He couldn't lose one individual. But saving them was not enough. He had to have the need to do it. And this need was clearly the need to have all individuals a part of our society.
These were children so deprived that standard intelligence tests were useless as a measure of their ability. And it wasn't just the victims of the Holocaust. Over the years, immigrant children poured into Israel from 70 different countries. Feuerstein had to find a way of reaching this tribe of lost children, and so his own long learning process began. Today there are 550 schools in Israel that use Feuerstein's method, and one of them is a senior school for underachieving girls at Neve Saret. Sissy Cholkovsky from Chicago is the principal. She's been teaching children of mixed abilities in Israel for more than 30 years. At first, she was one of Feuerstein's toughest critics, suspicious of a philosophy she thought too ambitious. 6 years ago, she saw the method at work and became a convert.
In the school that I'm working in now, there are certainly at least 30% who would have been put into special education. The students that we have either organic learning disabilities or a learned learning disability. They weren't accepted in the scholastic high schools in which they would be able to get to the matriculation. But through testing, we know that they have the potential.
The Feuerstein method that converted Sissy Cholkovsky has 3 essential parts: the right kind of belief, right kind of teaching, and the right kind of environment. The teachers have first to believe that every child can be transformed. Then they need to master a complex teaching technique that's specially designed to reach children with blocks in their thinking. At the same time, the teachers have to provide an environment in which children who've fallen seriously behind are given intensive care. At this school, most of the girls who came here as underachievers go on to higher education. 80% pass the equivalent of A-levels.
Education is something that you have to believe in. You have to believe that you can create a change. And if you don't believe that you can change someone, then you're the one who keeps them standing still. I think that was one of the big things that Feuerstein brought out, is that even what society had called retarded, and that can't move, and that all they did was play games with them and keep them from bothering the moving society, was a philosophy that he changed. You make them move. You may not be able to make them move and climb the Everest mountain, but you can make them move from one point to another, and for them that is a tremendous change, the very fact that a change has taken place.
Sometimes the first small change acts as a trigger for something more profound. The case of Yehuda. He was a severely retarded adolescent who'd spent nearly all his life in a mental home, until Feuerstein and his colleagues rescued him.
He came to us after having been 14 years in an institution which certainly was for very low function. And they referred him to us, and we've examined him. It was a small, very pale, very timid, shy-looking child with eyes always down, never looked up, and with a very peculiar voice, almost imperceptible. And indeed, for many years he had this voice which made him extremely peculiar. However, in a very short time, after a period of adaptation in Nechalim, in our treatment group, he turned out to be a wonderful student. After 2 or 3 years in the group care program, we placed him in a vocational high school, and he there showed some very special talents.
At 28, Yehuda is now the distribution manager of a large food company. He's also a Hebrew scholar.
Today, Yehuda has shown that we were right. He's an independent person, full of love to people, giving back much more than he received.
This is Yehuda's wedding day. He's marrying Nurit, a nursery school teacher. Even an optimist like Reuven Feuerstein never expected to see this day.
אשר ייתן אדוני לך מן הנעזות. ויחליך אדוני וישמרך, יאיר אדוני פניו אליך בכל מקום, יישא אדוני פניו אליך, וישם לך שלום.
Feuerstein believes that a strong culture is one that is bound together by the symbols of a shared faith and by the observance of family ritual.
לאדוני הישועה, על עמך ויחתך סלע. אדוני צבאות עמנו משגב לנו, אלוהי יעקב וסלע. אדוני צבאות אשרי אדם, בוטח בך. אדוני יושיע מלך יעננו, יום קוראנו, כוס ישועות אשא, ובשם אדוני יקרא סברי. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהים מלך העולם בורא פרי הגפן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם.
Apart from his record with the culturally deprived, the professors also had impressive results with Down syndrome children, educating them to a standard no one thought possible. Now, by a sad irony, his new grandson, El Hanan, has turned out to be a Down syndrome baby.
Well, it certainly came as a shock to all of us, but for very brief time after the news came. But very soon we all realized that it may become a source of joy, inasmuch that here we are going to be major partners in the making of a man. Hey.
Every day, the professor calls on his son and daughter-in-law and practices his method on his grandson.
ככה, תראי, בואי אני אראה לכם אותי. עכשיו, תני לו שיחזיק את זה ביד. תני לו את זה ביד.
תני לו את זה ביד.
הוא אתה אליי עכשיו.
תבקבוק.
אופס.
מה אתה? תני לו את זה.
אופס.
A Down syndrome baby is a challenge to Feuerstein's belief that chromosomes should never be given the last word. Intelligence, he insists, is not a fixed state.
No? Ba. Intelligence is the very process of change. What do I do when I adapt myself to a particular situation? I change. And we affect the capacity of the individual to become involved in the process of change. We increase this capacity. Let me give you the example with Hanan. After I taught him to do this, he learned to do this. Much easier. It took me, let's say, 50, 100 times to make him do this. It took me only 20 times to make him do this. Which means he has become more accessible to learning. His learning process was much easier, accelerated by his exposure to a learning experience done on a particular mediated way.
Children like these from the urban slums are obvious candidates for the Feuerstein treatment. They're the ones who can easily slip through the normal education net. Oren, the untutored pianist, and his twin brother Ronen live with their Indian parents in a Tel Aviv flat. The boys are 9 years old, but very backward. The twins are described as having serious behavior problems. Teachers won't have them in the classroom because they're disruptive, so they're virtually uneducated. They can't even speak intelligibly. Their mother is finding them impossible to handle, except when they're distracted by indie movies from the local video shop. Now the twins have been brought to Bar-Ilan University to be assessed by one of Professor Feuerstein's specially trained teams.
כמה נקודות יש במשולש? תגידי, כמה נקודות יש? לא, כמה נקודות תספור?
כמה? תראה,
לא בריבוע, במשולש. כן? יופי.
אל תסתכל במשולש.
כמה? תסתכל, פה תספור.
תספור. כמה נקודות יש
במשולש? לא בריבוע, במשולש.
These are teachers who've been taught that diagnosis and cure are part of the same process.
כמה נקודות יש במשולש? פה. כמה קווים? כמה? תספור.
I try to make teachers deeply concerned with the quality of life of their students. I try to make teachers make children believe in them, be confident, and become good mediators. If children, very severely affected children, can be modified, why shouldn't teachers be modifiable? I believe that people can change once they know what for. Once they know that by changing, they become more efficient. Once they know that there is a goal for the type of modifications they introduce in their approach to children, the way they speak to them, the way they involve them. And from this point of view, I consider teacher training as of prime importance.
הילד הזה רוצה צבע אדום. תביא לי צבע אדום בבקשה. תודה רבה. עכשיו,
The twins are being given a series of specially designed tests so that the flaws in their learning can be detected.
איפה צבע ירוק? זה ירוק? כן או לא? איפה צבע ירוק?
This test measures the child's ability to memorize colors and to order them in sequence.
עכשיו, ילד, אני לא שאלתי, הילד הזה רוצה, רונן, תסתכל אלייך, הילד מדבר איתך. צבע כחול בבקשה. היי, רונן, מישהו מדבר איתך. צבע כחול. או, לא תסתכלת. זה צבע כחול? זה צבע כחול? זה צבע כחול? זה? אתה חושב זה צבע כחול? לא. זה צבע כחול?
Already, the team have established that the 9-year-old twins are functioning at the intellectual level of 3-year-olds.
תודה רבה. עכשיו אתה עושה. תביא לי הילד צבע כחול. תודה.
Professor Feuerstein gives a masterclass here every week.
שלום לך, שב יפה. בוא נראה עכשיו. בוא, תראה לי בבקשה. מה אתה רוצה לעשות?
The masterclass is for teachers, psychologists, social workers, and therapists.
שב יפה.
שב יפה. שב. יופי.
את זה עשינו.
The tests will take all day. When the diagnosis is complete, Feuerstein and his team will make a decision about the twins' future. They have a reputation for never turning away a child.
זאת היא בעיה, זה מה שאני לא רוצה.
תסתכל רגע. מה זה פה?
זהו, יופי.
יופי.
יופי,
אז זה
ככה.
עכשיו?
בראבו.
עיגול, נכון.
לא, אבל הוא גם, יוסף, מצוין, יש ממש פעולה אלטרנטיבית. עם התנהגות יפה מאוד.
ממש הפנמה של העניין.
מצוין.
מצוין.
ואת זה בבקשה. עכשיו, אורן, שב בבקשה. שב יפה. טוב מאוד. תנו לי פיסת נייר. טוב. אורן, אני עכשיו רוצה שתצייר לי ילד. אבל תצייר אותו יפה כפי שלימדו אותך. טוב? תצייר יפה.
Feuerstein can see from Oren's crude drawings that he has a very undeveloped sense of his own body. But while he's being tested, Oren is simultaneously taught to learn, even from his mistakes.
טוב, תמשיך.
זה דימוי גוף שלכם? דימוי עצמי, התחיל לטפל בזה.
הכבוד, יופי.
יפה מאוד.
יפה.
דרך אגב, אני רוצה להגיד לכם, הסיטואציה הזאת מצדיקה גם בלי הצבא.
Feuerstein breaks all the establishment rules for psychological tests like these by intervening. He believes that a child learns best when he's in a dynamic partnership with the teacher.
הוא יודע יותר ממה שאנחנו
הוא גם עשה את החלק התחתון של הגוף.
טוב, אחר כך. נו,
מה עוד חסר לו לפמוד הזה?
את החלק התחתון שלו. מאיפה הידיים יוצאות? מאיפה הידיים יוצאות? מהגוף. מאיפה מהגוף?
הנה הוא למד כפול, לא?
למד שזה צריך לקרוא.
יש את הדברים שהוא למד.
יפה מאוד. כמה יש אצבעות? If there are limits, I don't know them. And when we are not able to make a child function, then we have some kind of a stiff finger, which goes only in one direction. It's his fault. And one of the great problems is to make this stiff finger more flexible so that he can also turn towards oneself, towards society, towards the teacher. Have I done all I needed in order to change this child? שולחן! עוד פעם אחת. לא, תעשה שולחן. עוד פעם אחת.
שולחן.
שולחן. חן. תעשה שולחן. עוד פעם אחת. תגיד איתי יחד, טוב? אורן, אנחנו היינו מוכנים לקחת אותם לחודש ימים ללימודים מאוד אינטנסיביים בירושלים, כדי לתת להם באמת דחיפה רצינית.
הם גם יהיו רציניים, אני חושבת.
מה?
הם גם יהיו יותר רציניים.
כן. תגידי לי, אם כבר היו פעם מחוץ לבית לבד, בלעדייך, בלעדי ההורים?
Feuerstein's philosophy may have sprung from his own deeply rooted Jewish culture, but it is not sectarian. In a city bitterly divided by language and religion, his teaching methods have been just as successful with Palestinian children. It's a system that works for Jew and Muslim, Christian and atheist. And for children from exotically mixed cultures, like the twins. The twins have arrived at the Hadassah Institute in West Jerusalem. They won't see their mother for the next 4 weeks. The idea is to change their environment completely. This is where Professor Feuerstein has his operating center. It's a kind of social laboratory that deals in only the toughest cases.
Shalom lach.
Children with apparently intractable learning problems are sent here from all over the world and given intensive care teaching. Apart from their speech problems, the twins have a devastatingly short attention span. They're consistently violent and can only relate to one another. They've never been away from home, so the change in their lives is going to be dramatic and painful.
Okay.
The twins can't read or write, so they're exposed to a different kind of stimulus. Ronen's introduced to the computer to see if he responds to language in a new form.
Ken. Ze. Ze. Lo. Ken.
They've taken an early decision to separate the twins. A tearful Oren is gently ushered to another part of the institute. His teacher, Moshe Avatal, who's a Moroccan, was himself one of the first generation of displaced children to be rescued by Feuerstein. He's been teaching the program for 15 years. Like the twins, Dragan, the 16-year-old Yugoslav, is an organic disorder. For years, his manic behavior has been controlled by heavy doses of drugs. The drugs have given Dragan disabling side effects, so that he can only perform simple mechanical tasks. If they can't break Dragan's dependence on drugs, then a boy with a potentially fine mind could spend the rest of his life in a sheltered workshop. In another part of Jerusalem, Professor Feuerstein is about to meet a group of children whose lives have already been transformed by exposure to the method. These are the children of poor families, and 2 years ago they were all at the bottom of their school class.
יופי, אוקיי, תמונה שנייה, רץ, עייף, יש לו מצב לידה, כן.
When LPAD tests revealed them to be potentially gifted, the children were all given an intensive course in something called instrumental enrichment, one of Feuerstein's major educational tools for building up learning skills.
Their thinking is much more organized. They can take almost anything that's given to them. They know how to look for their problem. They know how to solve the problem. They know how to just go about what they have to do.
באמת? ממה? מהיכן ידעתם לו כך? מה היא סיפרה לכם?
What we have today is that you have a social revolution, for instance. You open the doors of university to everybody, and you think that you have done it just by opening the doors, but you have done nothing because few go in, despite the open doors. So the social revolution without to attempt to increase intelligence, the modifiability, the learning capacity of individuals is of very little meaning.
מה הייחוד שבהשערה?
היא פותרת את הבעיות שיש במקצועות אחרים.
זה דבר נפלא. היא פותרת את הבעיות שבמקצועות אחרים.
I know that today these children are going to continue to the university. There's just no doubt in my mind, and that is something that I could never have said a year ago. I would have just said, no chance. These children will never get anywhere. They've got the potential. Certainly they've got the potential, but they've just never known. Nobody's ever taught them what to do with this potential, and here they're just flourishing. I mean, every week I get more excited. I don't know who's more excited than on I, but things are happening.
אי אפשר לקרוא בעיניים שלי, פה צריך. אין מי. תסתכל.
At the Hadassah Institute, Oren is being taught to read. His teachers are beginning to suspect that the twins' peculiar speech may have a genetic origin. They're approaching language by a different route, the printed word.
אורן, לא, תסתכל פה. אורן, להסתכל. איפה?
Towards the end of their month at the Institute, the twins' mother arrives to discuss their progress.
היי, בוקר טוב.
בוקר טוב.
מה שלומך?
בסדר.
נו, ספרי לי קצת.
אני מאוד מתרגשת, דבר ראשון.
כן, ממה?
מהזה, כל השינויים, אני לא חשבתי בכלל על זה. בחודש ימים כל כך הם השתנו, וחסר לי מילים, אני אומרת לך.
בת מה את מרגישה שהשתנו?
השתנו עד שהם נכנסו למכון, והם כל כך מתנהגים יפה, משפטים שלהם הם אומרים.
את שמעת אותם?
שמעתי אותם.
אני שמעתי שהם אמרו בפעם הראשונה את המילה אימא כפי שצריך.
אימא, ועכשיו אומרים, אימא, אני רוצה אוכל, אימא, תביא עוגה. כל כך הרבה משפטים הם אומרים.
הם גם משלימים את המילים?
משלימים? כן, משפט. אני לא חשבתי את זה בכלל.
טוב, אני רוצה להגיד לך, אני שמח מאוד לשמוע גם את זה. אנחנו ראינו גם כאן שינויים משמעותיים. אבל חשוב לנו לדעת שזה לא רק כאן, אלא גם בבית.
איך? לא, זה.
אתה.
עוד הפעם תסתכל.
אתה.
מה? תגיד יפה. מה?
מה?
תה? תה.
תה.
עוד הפעם, תסתכל.
מה? תה.
יפה מאוד. עוד הפעם.
מה?
איפה המטאטה? איפה המטאטה? יפה מאוד. עכשיו תראה. מה זה?
For the first time, the boys are beginning to pronounce words correctly and to form short sentences.
נעול. נעול. ועכשיו תגיד לי מה יש כאן על התמונה. תסתכל, מה יש כאן על הקיר? מה זה? יפה, עוד הפעם? איפה התמונה? איפה התמונה? מה זה? תמונה? על הקיר. על הקיר. יפה מאוד. עכשיו תגיד לי, איפה הספר?
הוא לומד? איפה? איפה? איפה הוא לומד? בישיבה?
אוכל? לא, אין לי אוכל. אז תגיד לי, אני רוצה לראות.
Julie, a speech therapist from California, heard Reuven Feuerstein lecture in America and came to Jerusalem to work with him. The twins are the most formidable challenge she's met.
It's very important that they continue in an environment that is challenging them, that is completely new and different for them, that they don't feel comfortable in, that they cannot do whatever they want to do when they want to do it. And I feel it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of work, a lot of patience, and also a lot of demanding. But yes, I hope for a lot.
אבא. זה אבא? אוקיי. אז קוראים לו אבא.
They are very difficult, as you saw. And there are times when you just feel like you can't go on. And they're the most difficult children that I've ever worked with. But then suddenly, there was a day last week where I worked with them. It was with Ronen. And he was able to work for 45 minutes. He didn't realize he was working. We were playing together, building, acting out a little play. And I looked at my watch. 45 minutes had gone by, and I couldn't believe it. And he was making spontaneous sentences. You have these giant leaps. And then you go back suddenly to a day like this with no explanation for it.
בסדר. מה אבא עושה עכשיו? אבא כי בחור. מה אבא עושה? בוכה. לא, אבל לא בוכה.
Julie's not just working on Oren's speech, she's attempting to modify his whole behavior pattern.
מה אבא עושה עכשיו? בנשו. תביא לי. או, איזה ילד טוב.
These are obviously behaviors that these children have been doing for a long, long time, and it's hard to crack, it's hard to break. But if you notice something very interesting, when they first started, he would have really thrown everything out that window. But he was playing with me. He would take the things right up to the window, look at me, and nothing went out that window. And I think this is also a sign of intelligence.
תודה. אתה רוצה לשחק עם הדברים שלנו? בוא תשב. בוא תשב על הכיסא שלך, ואנחנו משחקים גם עם הסברס. אתה זוכר הסברס?
We are present at an extraordinary evening. It's a prize-giving ceremony for caregivers, people who spend their lives helping the ill and very old.
Diana Abraham.
What they have in common, apart from their awards, is Down syndrome. And they've all been educated the Feuerstein way. Yigal, like his fellow students, has received an education that's pushed him beyond the narrow boundaries normally defined for Down syndrome children. It's given him power over his own life. Tonight he's written his own speech.
נכון, אהבי. ערב טוב לכל המוזמנים. אנחנו למדנו במכון במחקר שנה וחצי. הזמן עבר מהר מאוד, אבל הספקנו ללמוד הרבה דברים. למדנו איך לעזור לקשישים, איך לדבר איתם, איך לטפל בהם, לשחק איתם, להאכיל אותם, והרבה דברים אחרים.
Yigal and 10 other Down syndrome students have been helping the old and the infirm for 2 years and are now considered irreplaceable. Work alongside professional therapists as fully independent salary earners.
תזרוק. יופי. throw in the sky.
והאחרון, חביב, לפרופסור ראובן פוירשטיין. תודה רבה לכולם.
Suddenly, the man and his method are in demand around the world, and Reuven Feuerstein has come to New York to speak to senior American educators. There is concern that America's ethnic minorities could become a permanent underclass unless a new kind of education can bridge the gap. Many American educators are beginning to think that Feuerstein's way may be the answer.
Well, we started to talk, and I started to work with them slowly.
The professor begins his lecture, as he often does, with an anecdote. He tells his distinguished audience about a school in the Bronx he visited the day before, and of one teacher who sought him out.
And finally he became very enthusiastic, and when he succeeded, he was just shining, his face was shining of joy. And he came over to me and said, hey, I want to tell you something. Well, please. Tonight, I decided to give up on cocaine. Thank you for telling me. I didn't know that you were on cocaine. Yes. I was on cocaine at night. I decided to stop it. Robert, what has made you this kind of decision? I said, well, yesterday I learned that I have a brain, and it would be a pity to burn it down. I didn't know how deep and how sincere it was, and I don't know. But the very fact that this young man...
The professor's destination, the Harry S. Truman High School, is a concrete fortress on the edge of the Bronx. 90% of its 2,000 students are black or Hispanic. Many of the students at this school come from seriously deprived backgrounds. 2 years ago, an enlightened staff brought Feuerstein's teaching methods to students who'd fallen behind.
What else, Cengiz? Yes? Something very important which you have not yet mentioned, please. Direction we have said.
No.
Direction. How do we call this? Ah, that's the word, the order.
Today, senior New York educators are observing from the back of the class. They have the power to recommend that the Feuerstein method be adopted in schools throughout New York State.
It has all the right qualities. Can you now count, enumerate again all the qualities? Would you like to tell me why is this good? We started to work with the disabled group. Who part of them were visually impaired, others orthopedically, all functioning in with a 3 to 4 years gap. And I explained them that this is a new message I bring to them, that assessment will not be just to see how well they do, but how well they learn. I'm very excited and extremely attentive. And they succeeded beautifully to solve a problem of this nature where they had to look up for a number of transformations here, right? There happens to be types of additive processes. They learned to gather the data. They learned even to give me what is called logical evidence. And they ended by giving not only this result, but we gave them another page, and they acted just beautifully. Of course!
Reuven Feuerstein leaves for Jerusalem, knowing that the American College Board is considering introducing his program as an alternative route into higher education. If they do, it will open college doors to disadvantaged children across America. Back in Jerusalem, Reuven Feuerstein calls on the teenager whose life seemed to be blighted by a manic personality that was only kept in check by drugs. There's been a dramatic change. Dragan, the 16-year-old Yugoslav, has been weaned off those prescribed drugs. They've given him instead a strong belief in himself, and now he's motivated to learn. His mother, who'd almost given up hope, can hardly believe what's happened.
Dear Reuven, this is to thank you and all the enthusiastic young people around you for everything you've done for my son. You have achieved the almost unbelievable in not only getting Dragan off medication, but also in general. He seems to catch on and start functioning better than he ever did before.
He's now 4 months without an injection, and still no major catastrophe has happened. Not that it was easy for him, and even less was it easy for us and for his mother. We had to be extremely patient. Nevertheless, this is a great victory, because he has learned that he has to rely upon himself, control from within. He has gone a long, long way. First of all, he sits for hours and studies to give him a high school diploma, which will enable him to go into a upper level of studies, which has never been dreamt that he will be able to.
The twins are also unrecognizable from the deeply disturbed children of 6 months ago. They are calm, they can concentrate, and they can play together without causing havoc. Within a year, the twins are expected to enter ordinary school for the first time.
They have now learned to talk by learning to read. The visual stimuli serves as a referent to what they have to say. So we are bypassing the various difficulties posed by their condition. The first step is the belief. If you don't believe, you won't do. So how will you produce the change in the child? So you have first to have a firm belief that human beings can be modified irrespective of the severity of their condition, irrespective of their age, and irrespective of the etiology, it means the cause of their condition. Whether it is organic, whether it's environmental, whether it is motivational, whatever it is. You have to believe that it's modified. Once you have this, you need still a technique. So here comes in what we refer to the mediated learning experience or instrumental enrichment as a form of mediation, which will then give the teacher the tools to implement their belief system. Means you have to believe. Without it, the best techniques won't help you. After you have the belief and the good techniques, all you need is the environmental conditions to allow you to do the work.
אל תירא עבדי יעקב, אל תירא, דרך כוכבי יעקב, אל תירא עבדי יעקב, אל תירא, אפיים ישרש יעקב, אל תירא עבדי יעקב, אל תירא, זכור זאת ליעקב, אל תירא,